what's going on?
Oh man, it's a good day.
We're back again.
I'm excited that we're actually starting.
I know, right? It's been a bit of a delay, a little bit of a gap.
It has. But we're excited.
We are excited. This is season 2.
It is season 2.
And just in case you don't know, the same table is all about different people with different perspectives, different cultures, different outlooks coming together around the same table. And the table metaphorically represents Jesus, who invites all of us, no matter who we are, what we look like, where we come from, every nation, tribe, and tongue, around his table, his banquet table, as followers of his, as kingdom ambassadors, as what heaven will be. All this glorious picture of all of us, no matter where we come from, around the table as Christ as Lord. And so that's what we want to kind of get a foretaste of and get a sampling of as we share and learn through culture and through each other, but also just getting a sense of what God is up to in this beautiful creation, this mosaic. And so I'm excited about season 2.
I am excited about season 2. And I think thinking about season 1, we really laid the groundwork, just trying to figure out, okay, what are we talking about? How do we go about addressing some of these even surface things that hopefully touch a core? I think in season 2, we've been planning and we've been thinking about it. And I think the heart is to go a little deeper. What can we explore a little bit more about ethnicity and culture? I think in the lens of church, like in the local, but also global, universal sense. And I think we want to also, uncover a new layer of perspectives, get to hear a little bit more. And I think the framework we talked about was lived experiences and learning. I think some people that we'll have on the season will weigh a little bit more in the lived experience, and some will teach us some stuff.
Some good nuggets.
Which I'm excited about. And then some people, I think, inevitably, people will embody both. For sure. Lived experiences that we can learn from and grow from. So, So Matthew, who's this for?
This is going to be, well, again, we try to target a very organic and local audience. And so we really try to speak from an Atlantic Canadian context, a maritime context, Scotian context, but also the other provinces. So that's kind of our ground zero. That's who we're talking to. If you're out there, if you're not familiar with where Atlantic Canadians are, look on the map, do your global geography. But yeah, we want to very much be a localized kind of focus area, be very incarnational, you know what I mean, Deb?
And embodied.
So we want to embody the maritime ethos for this podcast, and also just like what is multi-ethnic church ministry lifestyle, how are we reconciled together here in a maritime context and what that means. And so that's our kind of focal point, but of course we want the rest of Canada and the world to kind of listen in and glean from what's happening contextually here. But that's who we're looking at, that's who we're targeting, that's who we're speaking to, that's in which this is the context in which we come from, what we live in, what we kind of eat and breathe every day. And so that's what it is.
And I think it's not, in case it's not obvious, we also are people of faith, followers of Jesus. And
love Jesus.
I think that's a particular angle in which we really frame a lot of this conversation. I think recognizing that there's both a commandment that Jesus gives us, but also a beautiful picture that he describes. And there's a lot of conversation in the world and in different parts of, especially North America and Canada and stuff like that. There's lots of conversation around this topic of culture, ethnicity. But I think, what does it look like? I think you said it really well. It's a discipleship thing too, that we grow in and that we, how do we live that, I guess, unearth that or make that reality true here, and knowing that it's going to be fully true around that banquet table that you talked about at the beginning.
100%.
So.
And one thing we like to say, speaking, you prompted me, is diversity is important, but as followers of Jesus, it's ultimately about our discipleship, what it means to follow Christ in a multi-ethnic context, which we biblically think is what Christ calls us to as his body, as his church. And so I'm excited for what this is. And as you were speaking, I was just thinking about how, how this season, I think, is going to build really well on the last season.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to going deeper with our guests and learning more about just the unique ways people come to Jesus, how their culture impacts their faith, how they see Christ, how they understand God.
Yeah.
And even just as we were brainstorming this season, I'm just really excited about some of those perspectives and insights, and even ways that, at least on paper in terms of planning, how I think we're going to be challenged and provoked. And really, this podcast is designed to try to challenge you at a posture level and perspective level. We're not trying to convince you of your theological positions or trying to persuade you to think like we think. We really just want to have conversations and dialogue around specific topics, and allowing that to just the Holy Spirit really to use that to kind of shape and to mold and to challenge and to convict, and just letting the Holy Spirit do what the Holy Spirit does.
Yeah.
And so that's really, our hope through this is to see just God work through the conversations that we have with folks and with each other.
Yeah, I'm really grateful that you touched on that, because I think it's like, what can you expect from our conversations? I think one of the things that it's like, hopefully we have fun. Hopefully we like get to know some people and get to learn their experiences, and even hear from their, all of the perspectives, why they have that perspective. And I think this is a space for growth. It's a space where it's okay to say, oh, maybe I need to change my mind on some things. Maybe I need a moment to think a little bit more on this. I don't know what I think about this quite yet. And I think that's okay. Yeah. And maybe in a world, especially in this day and age, where it feels like it's not okay. Yes. It's not okay to grow. It's not okay to change. You really got to be locked into all these things. And if you change, there's a lot of questioning of who you are. And I think we want to say this is a space where we can do that. And absolutely. We give permission to those who are listening in that you can do that too. Yeah. You can grow, and you can and you can change your mind, and you can be challenged, and you can also not know all the
you can get it wrong. Yeah, it's okay to get it wrong.
Yeah.
And I know that's a fear that I know sometimes I have, and a lot of people have, is in this intercultural, multi-ethnic space, especially as this conversation pans out within our culture and society. The fear of being canceled or not saying every political correct term, people struggle with, and I think often don't engage on the journey of learning and developing and growing and being stretched, because there are sometimes real consequences to have a misstep. And that's one thing we want this podcast to do, is to create a healthy, constructive, loving space where if you're sincerely on the journey, that you can just sincerely be where you are at and learn from that place, and lots of grace and understanding. And I think those are the environments that help people actually learn and grow through what it means to be one in Jesus and to reflect his kingdom in the diversity in which we live and work and play. And so I think I hope that this podcast will just be a witness, an example of how do we talk about very complex things that can often be divisive and dividing, but use them in a healthy way that actually develop us and bind us together in unity more strongly. So I hope so too. We can capture that, and that translates to those who tune in.
I hope so.
Yeah, we'll see.
I get it wrong.
You might hate us. No, you won't. It'll be all good.
How could you?
Exactly. Absolutely.
But you touched on it, Matthew. This is a podcast.
Yes.
We've got the setup here, and I think we touched on it in season 1. What do you think? Why this platform? Why this way?
Yeah. Well, I think this podcast is birthed out of Deepwater Church, which is located in Halifax, and Deepwater is definitely committed and is embodying and growing in their own desire to be a multi-ethnic church in Halifax, and really, I think in many ways, pioneering and just taking this type of ministry serious in terms of investment, training, development, and so I got to be a part of that. And one of the reasons why we decided that podcasting could be effective is is when we were kind of navigating as a church, we did some cultural assessments, and we found that our church was very high in desire to change and to embrace more diversity and what it means to have church together, but our knowledge was lacking. And so we thought, instead of people having, Deb, you and I having this conversation, just the two of us, and it's very fruitful and meaningful, and maybe even could be encouraging to those listening. If we're not recording it, we would have to have it a bunch of times.
It's true.
So there's an efficiency of podcasting, but ultimately we hope that by having these conversations, it'll just be a means of education that has the ability to people to tune in, to watch it, to listen to it, and just a way of educating, discipling, equipping those who tune in, specifically within a Deepwater context, but also, again, much broadly, as I shared earlier. But yeah, just a way to continue in that education and be on that journey of what it means to be a part of a multi-ethnic church, but also, and we'll talk more about this as the season goes on, but also embodying a multi-ethnic lifestyle.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to experience worship on Sunday with this mosaic of people. It's another thing to, how do you have real relationships with people who are different from you?
Yeah.
How do you kind of overcome some of those cultural differences? How do you discover a lot of times there's a lot of similarities as human beings. Yeah. But also, how do we use the beauty of our diversity to enrich each other? I really think, even in creation, diversity creates an enrichment. It helps us to see the beauty of God's creation more in depthly. And I find it invokes worship. Like, God, like, you are so amazing in the beauty of your creation, in the trees, in the water, in the landscape, in the architecture. And I think it's the same thing with the diversity of us as different cultures and shades and ethnicities. When we understand what those are and the beauty that they bring, it enriches us. And for me, I ultimately give praise and honor to the Creator who's endowed us with such beauty and uniqueness. Yeah. And I think it's funner, just being very the same or very monolithic is kind of boring. It's just, sure. I mean, it's easy, it's more efficient, but it's kind of like, I want a little different. I want a little taste. I want to be a little uncomfortable. Yeah. And maybe I'm unique in that way, but I think this podcast will help people kind of get a taste and get some flavoring of that. And again, this is why we chose to podcast, just because it's a great tool. Yeah. That has a lot of reach and effectiveness.
Yeah, I think sometimes there's teaching that we can receive, which has a certain flavor to it, right? But when you have a conversation, I think you can really get a sense of someone's story a little bit more. And I think at the same time, it's like not as accessible because I don't have that many friendships or relationships in all these different spaces. I don't think anyone really does. So hopefully in the conversations that we have, we basically offer the permission to eavesdrop into a conversation. The permission to listen and to learn in maybe ways that you don't have the natural opportunity to. So I think we're hoping for that. So, I mean, you kind of mentioned this while you were saying like Deepwater Church and all this sort of thing. You were like, they. So Matthew, maybe let's go a layer deeper into like maybe a personal update. Because I mean, we ended season 1. Yes. And I think it was like, hey, season 2, it's coming in the fall of 2022. Yes. And I think you were like, hey, Matthew, I think we asked you, Matthew, are you back? You were like, yeah, I'd like to be back. You asked me, and I was like, I mean, maybe I'll be back. We asked AJ, and he was like, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So a few things have changed.
There's been some change.
Maybe we'll a little life update.
Yes. So
how you doing, Matthew?
Quick life update. Yeah. So when I said that, I was on staff at Deepwater, and I had 3 children. And I was pretty stoked about season 2. Yeah. But since then, I actually recently left the staff at Deepwater.
Yeah, come on, man.
And so now I'm working at Dalhousie University.
Yeah, we're happy about that.
As a Black student advisor. Yeah. Supporting students of African descent on campus. And then as of recently, my wife birthed our 4th child.
Hey,
So
congratulations.
I got a squad of 4.
Welcome to the Thomas family.
Yeah, living the newborn stage, which is beautiful and exhausting all in one. But again, I'm not going to lament because my wife Alyssa, she does all the heavy lifting.
She sure does.
And I don't have that gifting and ability. but when every time one of my children have been born, it's just amazing to see how life is created. And also just the bonding of a mother and the child, but also just the sacrifice to feed the child and to care for the child and yes,
to feed the child and to feed the child
and to feed the child and to feed the child some more. And Luca is his name, and he's a hungry guy. And so a lot of changes, and then of course with my transition, there was kind of created some hiccups with what to do with the podcast. Do we continue doing it? Do we not do it? How does it work if I'm not on staff anymore, and all these types of things. So it's pretty cool, and I think because it's such an important conversation, we have been able to navigate those changes in life to still prioritize this because we think this conversation is that important. And so I'm still grateful to be a part of it and to still contribute in some way. But yeah, that's the extra layer that you were referring to. But Deb, what about you? You did say that you were going to be back, and then. So how are you showing up in season 2? What has happened since season 1 for you?
Yeah, well, I have not had quite the changes as you have. I still have my family of 4, and I was never employed by Deepwater, so I still go to Deepwater Church as just a person that goes to Deepwater Church. But I think for me, a lot of it, because a lot of things were happening to you, Matthew, and I think in different parts and different moments along the way. I'll admit I was really sad. Had some disappointment, and I had a lot of questions. But what do we do? Where do we go from there? And maybe a little deep cut. We actually started recording season 2.
I didn't want to bring it up.
And then we had some real heartbreak losses, and in so many ways. And so I think that just as in hard drive losses. Yes. And that really fueled my what do we do? Is it worth trying to re-record? What do we do? And I think you were going through some different things too. Yeah. And I was just kind of listening, waiting. And I think I definitely got to a point where I was like, maybe this is not worth it. But that's mostly my personality, that when things are hard and other people are going through some challenges, I tend to avoid conflict at all costs. So I was like, I don't know if I really want to fight for this. Yeah. And I don't know. I think I just kind of sat with it for probably a couple of months, just kind of considering what is God doing in my heart and in my own personal journey of learning and growing. What does this look like for me? Yeah. And I think probably the first conversation that you and I had, probably a few months ago, I had just kind of got to a point where I was like, I think I need to actually bring more of myself to the table. And
we want to see Deb.
I think I want to, what does it look like for me to say, this is important. Let's make space. Let's pursue this. Yeah. And I think after just allowing myself to think about that, the passion was definitely had always been there, but maybe I gave myself permission to feel that again. And so I think since then, you and I have had multiple conversations, dreaming, thinking, and planning. And I just think that more and more so, I think just a reminder of why we started this, why we pursued it, why we kept thinking about how do we keep doing this? How do we keep having these conversations? And I think especially in the context of Atlantic Canada, where I am. And in season 1, I think I touch a little bit about my story of how it's taken me a long time to even embrace that I belong to Atlantic Canada. Yeah. So I think part of it is my journey through it as well. And so I'm excited. We have hopes and dreams. We're still locking in guests. So hopefully all of those things fall into place. But
podcast life. Yeah,
I think the desire and the passion is there. And I think an openness to consider what might God be doing. Yeah. What is he inviting us into? So we hope to invite y'all into the conversation too. Yeah. So that's what season 2. that's what's going on with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, any final words for this episode 0?
Well, actually, I was just thinking if anyone out there has suggestions on topics or areas that you think are interesting or would want some development or growth in, like, go in the comments if you're watching on YouTube or reach out to us directly.
We'll give you an email.
Yeah, we'll give you some
on the outro.
On the outro, we'll give you some contact info. Yeah, we love to hear from you, or even if you have questions that kind of come up as you're listening, that are kind of provoked or just like are burning inside or whatever. We love to hear from those who are tuning in, because it is a conversation between us, but also with those of you who are listening or watching. We love to have some engagement in that way.
Yeah.
So I'm just excited, Deb. I know I've said that a few times, but I really can't wait to start this season. It's been kind of a long time coming to get it season 2 off the ground. I love some of the guests that we have lined up, and I think for those of you who are tuning in are going to be enriched and are going to be educated and will benefit greatly for tracking with us for season 2 of the Same Table Pod.
Yeah. Do you want to land the plane? Do you want me to land the plane?
You land the plane.
I'll land the plane?
Yeah, land the plane.
All right.
Absolutely. You can keep us together.
Think about it. Okay, we'll see what happens.
But also, that's the beauty of Sam Prime. He can put his primal touch on it. If we need to.
He'll fix it in post, right?
Yeah. We need to
land the plane. I'm kidding, Sam. People say that to me all the time.
You are now tuned in to the Same Table Aftershow. Hey. What is the Aftershow?
What is the Aftershow?
Well, it is a new addition to this season of the Same Table Podcast. And we're super excited because we have, of course, we got Deb.
Hello.
Who's here. But we have a new guest who's going to be joining us throughout this season. His name is Samuel Prime. Sam, welcome to the Same Table.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. It's awesome.
It's great to have you. And one cool thing about you, Sam, is people may not know you are the behind the scenes person. So you are the video capturer, the sound editor, the pre and post production person. And so you kind of have a unique perspective in being able to, as you edit, maybe pick up other insights and information of the content and the conversations that we've been having. And so welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. Glad to be here.
And why don't you just tell folks who you are, a little bit of what kind of brings you to the table today. Yeah. And let's start there.
Yeah, for sure. I'll start. I'm white, really white.
Oh, that's a great start.
I'm wearing a Costco hoodie. It literally doesn't get any whiter.
Not an ad.
Hey, yo, I'm white.
Yeah. Like that's, I'm wearing a Costco hoodie. I shop at Costco. Like you'd think I'm like 40 years old, but I'm not. I grew up in an incredibly white context. My elementary school, middle school, from what I recall, there was no people of color, no real other cultures represented from, yet again, what I recall at least. That didn't really change until middle school. In the church context that I was in, my dad's church had a farmer in the congregation, and he would hire families from Jamaica to come and work on the apple orchard. And that was really the first exposure that I had to different cultures, which really isn't that large of an exposure when the rest of the church is like the same and there's like one family or two families. Until about high school, that started to shift a little bit more, not a lot, but a little bit. We had an international student program. So students from all different backgrounds and cultures would come and study through their like year of high school or whatever it was, and then they'd go back to their homes. So really it was like super sheltered until I actually came to Halifax, and then jumping in with Deepwater specifically, there's been a lot of different, we are a multicultural church, or Deepwater is a multicultural church. So there's a lot of different cultures and backgrounds and people that are represented that I've never really had exposure to. Like even when I went to Bible college, you're in Sussex, New Brunswick, cow town, more cows than there is people. There's nothing there. Like, most people are white unless there's international students, which there were when I was going through. Right. So like even in that context, it's still like you're not exposed to a lot of cultures. So Same Table Podcast, at least editing it has been and being a part of it has been really unique. to hear people's stories, not only the first time, but the second and third and fourth time that I listen to them.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of nuggets and pieces of wisdom that I get to take from that, and also learn and hear and understand people a little bit better, which is always important.
Yeah, and it's great to have you pull up to the table, because the whole concept of this podcast is really to bring different perspectives, different backgrounds together to have conversation and dialogue around the same table, which metaphorically represents Jesus and the oneness that we have as believers, regardless of nation, tribe, and tongue. But also how there's always a space that you can pull up and share your perspective, where you're welcome to at Christ's banquet table. But also, we believe that in having our unique perspectives and how even culturally they're framed and shaped actually enables us to see more fully God and what he's doing in creation, in our lives, in our communities. And this podcast very much is contextualized within Deepwater Church, but also this conversation we want to expand to Halifax and even be contextualized within a Canadian culture and what's happening here and what God is up to. And so we're super excited for you to bring your unique perspective to this conversation, because it's needed, it's important. And as I said earlier, I think the more we can share our presuppositions and our biases and our ignorances and our just points of reference, whatever they look like, because there's validity to those, but also God has been at work in and through those spaces. And so it just makes the conversation more rich. And also, I'm very curious, as you alluded to, it's a very bold introduction to just drop, yo,
I'm white.
Yo, I'm white. Yeah. But also just curious of how, as a white brother, how you filter through certain conversations. I'm curious, and I'm sure there's, I hope a lot of, again, different people tune in, and I'm curious just how you adding perspective will help people understand, both in perspective, but maybe in where you're challenged, and all those different things. So we're super excited to have you here.
Happy to be here.
And looking forward to what the after show will be. Speaking of the after show, the format, what is this? Deb, why don't you tell the God's people, or people tuning in, a little bit about the after show, how it's going to flow, what to expect, and such.
Yeah, I think when Matthew and I were dreaming up season 2, we were like, oh, what's a piece that we want to bring that's different, that we haven't brought in season 1? And giving ourselves a little bit of space and time to acknowledge that this is an ongoing conversation, that sometimes we hear stories and sometimes we learn something that doesn't quite sit well the first time, the second time, third time, and maybe just giving ourselves the grace to say that's okay. That's okay to hear something and have questions. So we wanted to kind of maybe model that conversation a little bit for viewers and listeners who may be taking in some of the stories and they have questions and they have, things that they want to think about a little bit more. So that's what the after show is. It's a little bit more casual. We kind of wore hoodies to reflect that a little bit more. And I think at the heart of it too, we want to leave you guys some questions to think about as we're, digesting ourselves, but we also want to extend the table to you, and that you can extend the table to someone else as well, and take some of those questions and think about it a little bit more, help those, ideas marinate a little bit more,
chew on it a little bit.
And maybe just even through conversation with someone else, a different story. What is God revealing to you about your story? How you need to see something a little bit differently. And so I think that's the heart behind it. We just want to, it's not going to be super long, but we wanted to just model the idea that we don't have to have it all figured out. And this is not a nice tidy bow at the end of every episode, but it's like this is an ongoing conversation.
Go get messy.
It is. It's a journey.
And I think that's the heart of it.
For sure.
And so don't just stop at the end of a guest.
Journey with us. The after show will be after every episode, and we want you to tune in. And I would say too, my hope is that there'll be things that you pick up that you may have missed, or just having the space to further reflect and deliberate and just ruminate on information, I think is so healthy and helpful to really absorb the fullness of what that experience can offer.
Yeah.
And we hope that this space will allow you and us to just continue to engage well on this journey.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
Me too. Seek discomfort. I mean, hey,
Yep.
nobody grows in their comfort. That's all
Yeah.
I'm saying.
You know what I say? If you don't go, you won't grow.
Preach.
Come
And
on.
I have nothing to say,
You
but
have no-
welcome, Sam.
Thank you.
Well, there you go. It's the same table after show. Let's get it.
Hey, thanks for hanging with us at the same table, a Deepwater Church podcast. To learn more about who we are, where we are, resources we offer, and ways to get involved, go to deepwaterchurch.com. The Same Table podcast is produced by Matthew Thomas and Deb Wong. Technical production by Sam Prime. Drop us a note if you have any questions, encouraging words, or something you'd like to learn more about at info@deepwaterchurch.com.